with an appreciable growth rate from 10.07% in the last quarter of 2017 to 14.85% in the first quarter of 2018.
The period you need to wait before you have that profit is fairly long in the solid minerals.
The World Bank, that had earlier invested $150 billion, is committing another $125 million in the industrial minerals industry, while $730,000 for the upgrading of 6 cadastral offices in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country.
You cannot apply for licenses depending on the license you want online. It is going to be automated, and you don't need to come to our mining cadastral office in Abuja.
We also think that Nigeria is an attractive destination for foreign investment as well, and so we're working with the government to have a sort of proof of concept that big investors, mining companies can come to Nigeria and they can do well.
Now, kaolin, dimension stones and barytes are to be processed in Nigeria, while the aluminium smelter company in Akwa Ibom State and the Jakarta Steel Company in Kogi State are coasting to full operation.
At a gap of 626,921 tons per annum do exist in the local production of industrial minerals required by the local industries, which is currently filled by annual importation costing about $44.5 million.
3.5 billion naira was realized from the sector in 2017 alone, courtesy of the aggressive fight against unorganized mining, those in the driver's seat of the solid mineral sector in Nigeria. It is a safe and gradual ride.
These developments show that the solid mineral sector is poised for the phenomenal growth towards national development. That's about it on Dateline 360. Thanks for watching. Until next time, it's goodbye.
Great nations produce what they eat and use. In the last 4 years, we have started to move away from just consumption to domestic production. Because we cultivated policies around growing what we eat, our land has grown far more rice than any time in our history, producing food, jobs, prosperity and dignity for millions of our countrymen and women. Reversing the trend of fertilizer importation under the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative puts not only plants and many citizens to work, but also saves valuable foreign exchange. Also, the foundation for Made in Nigeria has been laid, building special economic zones around the country in partnership with the private sector. Nigeria is now truly at the cusp of not only making what we use, but exporting what we make. The Enyimba Economic City, Funtua Cotton Cluster, and Lekki Model Industrial Park offers world-class facilities, positioning Nigeria as the preeminent manufacturing hub in sub-Saharan Africa. But there's much more to expect at the next level. Mechanized farming, making tractors and processors available in every local government area in Nigeria will add great value to agriculture. Farmers and herders will coexist and produce efficiently and eradicate the age-long conflict over land, water and pasture. More and more production and processing centers and clusters will bring more work and prosperity ladder to millions and millions of our people. Cultivating and making things are much tougher work than destroying. To grow and make Nigeria attain the next level of all our dreams requires coming together, pulling our energies together and planting the seeds, assembling the plants, one seed, one part at a time. Let's build bridges. Let's blend tolerance, peace, and unity. Let's all go higher to the place of prosperity, security, and stability. Welcome to the next level.
Imagine a station where you access information. Think of a station that creates awareness for national development. Imagine a station that prepares you for a bright and greater future. A station for all ages. Documentaries, classroom and television, events coverage, children's programs and variety shows. Always stay tuned to NTA Knowledge on the StarTimes platform, channel 359. For partnership, sponsorship and advert placements, contact us on NTA Knowledge. NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizon.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says unity is key in surmounting national challenges.
Well, the end of our story is right. The end of our story is good.
Presidential task force faces Herculean task, clearing trucks stuck on Apapa access roads.
Federal government launches e-government master plan 2020.
We expect that faithful implementation of this master plan will enhance national competitiveness.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the Niger Delta affairs in the last 4 years, as well as bills passed and assented to during the 8th Assembly.
The Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs was the brainchild of late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua's administration now, with the aim of redressing environmental degradation of the oil-rich region of the country and also addressing developmental issues, including youth restiveness in the area.
Indeed, the development of the Niger Delta has always been on the front burner of national discourse, well before the Yar'Adua administration came up with a full-fledged ministry, as it were, to address the concerns of the region. Now, we recall the Willings Commission report, the Niger Delta Development Board, UNPADEC, and of course some of the latest measures being adopted to redress issues arising from the Niger Delta.
You're right, Kingsley. Now, placating the Niger Delta region and its people has been a major preoccupation for successive administration, like in the last 20 years of our democracy.
You're right, Blessing, and of course, all that has been in a bid to ensure that the country continues to maintain favorable oil production quotas for the sustenance of the country's virtual mono economy. And many would obviously agree that the incumbent administration, that's the Buhari administration, has striven in seeking to curtail restiveness in the region and taking on one of the most critical issues, which is the cleanup of Ogoni land.
All this are just right facts that you're giving us this morning. Now, the administration's robust interventions in terms of projects and human capital development have also come through with the vehicles of the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, as well as the Presidential Amnesty Program of the federal government.
Well, we'll get to hear a lot of those interventions in terms of the successes and challenges on the program, which is Good Morning Nigeria. And Blessing, we do have a second conversation today, which is going to dwell on the bills passed by the outgoing 8th National Assembly, as well as those that received presidential action. Of course, we'll be doing this from the perspective of the executive branch of government.
Well, perhaps the most gladdening bill for workers this year, Kingsley, if you agree with me, is that of the national minimum wage, which was speedily passed by both chambers of the National Assembly and assented to by the president.
Exactly, Blessed, but it wasn't always uhuru in the executive-legislature relationship, as a total of 48 bills so far did not get presidential assent, and this has been for the past 4 years.
So what were the feats recorded and the challenges for the 8th National Assembly? What other bills are still pending? Well, we shall have guests to look into some of these areas with us today on the program as we look at aspects of, as we look at that, as well as the issue of the Niger Delta region. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria this beautiful Monday. My name is Blessing Abu. It's always a pleasure to have you join us.
All right, it's a cool Monday in the Federal Capital Territory. Of course, it rained last night, so the weather...
Very cool.
Yes, it's good. I'm not quite sure what the temperature is like now, but obviously, later in the day, assuming the skies don't get cloudy, the temperatures will pick up here at the FCT. So wherever you're joining us from, my name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I joined my colleague, of course, Blessing, also welcoming you to this program, which is being broadcast live, as always, on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, in the course of the program, we have our traditional complementary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's take the highlights of the morning news with our colleague, Ruth Aguele. Hello, Ruth. Good morning.
Good morning, Kingsley and Blessing, and here is the morning news. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has tasked all Nigerians to come together as one to surmount all challenges facing the country for better years ahead. This was at the 2019 presidential inaugural interdenominational church service, which held at the National Christian Center, Abuja.
We may begin with darkness, we may begin with confusion, as it was at creation. But the end of our story is bright. The end of our story is good.
The administration of President Muhammadu Buhari believes peaceful coexistence of all Nigerians.
Wife of the President, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, has given the assurance that the rights of women, as enshrined in the nation's constitution, will be protected. Mrs. Buhari gave the assurance in an interactive session with Nigerian women leaders as part of May 2019 presidential inaugural activities in Abuja.
Realistic if the efforts of Nigerian women and youths are compensated through both elective and appointive positions at all levels. Let me appeal to those concerned at this important period when the administration is commencing its second term. It make concerted effort, and as a matter of urgency too, Nigerian women and youth should be given all the necessary support to allowed a fair share in decision-making and the governance of the country.
Hundreds of trucks packed on several access roads leading to the Lagos ports are yet to move, hours after the expiration of the presidential directive. Now, NTA's findings shows that the enforcement team of the presidential task force was yet to take action on the trucks.
Before pushing the Navy on the road, they carry all the trucks inside the walk road, and every place is so blocked. That is why the road is like this.
And now federal government has raised the bar on efforts to digitize means of communication and service delivery in government businesses with the launch of Nigeria E-Government Master Plan 2020. The master plan is expected to instill transparency, efficiency and quality in all sectors when fully adopted.
We expect that faithful implementation of this master plan will enhance national competitiveness, facilitate market economy, and translate into enormous economic growth for Nigeria.
I am convinced that this government is serious enough because it appreciates the critical importance of e-governance to national development.
And on security, the air component of Operation Hadarin Daji has destroyed an armed bandit camp and neutralized dozens of bandits in airstrikes conducted at Dambarao Forest in Zamfara State. The operation was executed on May 25th following human intelligence reports indicating that some locations within the forest were being used by the armed bandits as hideouts, including a group of hordes belonging to a notorious kingpin named Dangote. Accordingly, following confirmatory intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, an Alpha jet aircraft was detailed to attack the armed bandits' camp, leading to the destruction of their structures and neutralization of close to 24 bandits. And now, in line with the post-election peace initiative by the Rivers State government, the Kula Supreme Council of Traditional Rulers has appealed to the governorship candidate of the African Action Congress in the 2019 general election to withdraw his case at the Election Petition Tribunal, challenging the re-election of Governor Nyesom Wike.
I know for your sake we will agree, but in principle, two people are dragging. They too will agree some.
Let us work together with the present administration so that there will be peace, harmony, and unity in our river state.
This harmony to come and see our son, to talk to him, to give him this advice, this word of peace, to make sure River State move forward.
And President Muhammadu Buhari on Sunday extended birthday wishes to the patriarch of the Dantata family, Alhaji Aminu Dantata, who attained 88 years. The president extolled Alhaji Aminu's role as a public officer, business and community leader who engineered an ecosystem that fostered creativity of young minds in business by generously supporting innovations long before government got interested in promoting startups. He was acutely aware that unless our communities promoted education and business enterprise, the country cannot realize its potential and compete with other emerging economies, President Buhari said. According to him, it was Alhaji Aminu Dantata's exemplary leadership of the Kano business community that set the foundations for a prosperous and inclusive Kano state. I pray for his longer and healthier life, the president added. And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Blessing after this break. Stay with us.
The clock is ticking. It's the signal for the inauguration of the 16th President of Nigeria and 5th President in the 4th Nigerian Republic.
Nigerians are set to mark the beginning of the second term of Muhammadu Buhari as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The first term saw the most massive critical infrastructural development, agricultural revolution, war against corruption, tackling insecurity, and unprecedented social investment programs. Our opportunity to keep moving our country on the path to a prosperous future. It's the next level for the Nigerian people. This is our time as Nigerians. Come, let us celebrate the next level with Muhammadu Buhari, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria. Date, Wednesday, 29th May 2019. Venue, Eagle Square, Abuja. Time, 8 a.m. prompt. Roll out the drums. Come, let's celebrate.
Announcer Boss Gida Mustafa, Secretary to Government of the Federation and Chairman 2019 Presidential Inauguration Committee.
It's Ramadan. It's okay to share what you love. Ramadan Kareem from Indomie. Indomie Super Pack now available at 85 Naira.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Her Excellency, Dr. Mrs. Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, wife of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, will host a Children's Day party as part of the programs for the 2019 presidential inauguration. Date, Monday, 27th May 2019. Venue, State House, Abuja. Time, 1 p.m. This event is strictly on invitation. Announcer, Hajia Maria A.D. Rufai. Secretary, Subcommittee on First Ladies' Activities for Presidential Inauguration 2019.
Son, being good at something requires strength. It requires pushing yourself. It requires putting in more. That's why the new improved Bornvita is packed with vitality and a great taste.
NTA Television College Jos announces admissions into 2-year diploma programs in film and television production, television engineering, and broadcast journalism. The sale of forms will commence on the 13th of May and run through 30th July 2019. Admission forms can be obtained from all marketing offices, NTA state capital stations, zonal centers, or at the office of the academic secretary, NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos.
On payment of a non-refundable fee of 7,500 naira in bank draft in favor of NTA TV College. Applicants can also obtain the forms through the NTA TV College portal at www.ntatvc.edu.nj.
Applicants are required to possess 5 credits in GCE or SSCE in relevant areas of study in not more than 2 sittings, including English and mathematics. All properly completed forms attached with photocopies of credentials must be submitted on or before 30th July 2019. For further inquiries, please visit our website at ntatvc.com or call 0803-3144-383.
NTA TV College, training you to be the best you want to be.
Registrar, Announcer.
Welcome back. If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on the network service of the NTA. The expanse of arable land in Nigeria places the nation at a vantage position to be a global food exporter. Hence, the African Development Bank is seeking to harness Nigeria's agricultural potential. Let's find out more details with Kolo Mohammed and Business Package.
Research has shown that 90% of Nigeria's total land is arable. What this means is that Nigeria can be a global major food exporter. Despite the noticeable decline in food import bills, reduced by about 76%, youth unemployment still persists. African Development Bank is looking to scale up and accelerate integrated, innovative approaches the agri potential Nigeria has. This it intends to achieve by engaging the private sector to identify the challenges and recognize what needs to be done.
And at our level, we are already doing something. In every infrastructure investment that we are doing in Nigeria, we don't just invest in road or power projects just for the sake of the infrastructure. We are beginning to identify how are these investments connecting the the crops areas where the bank can help increase access to markets so that food produced cannot be spoiled at farm gates but can be exported or can reach the market so that it can be sold, or they can reach even the processing zones where they can be processed and exported later.
Government alone cannot do this. Stakeholders and citizens must join hands to take the nation's agri sector to the next level. And regulators, stakeholders, and market players are bracing up to open proceedings for the week on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. As always, NTA News will keep you sufficiently informed at the close of market later today. My name is Kulum Hamad. Be with you again soon.
All right, thank you very much, Kolo Mohammed, for that business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Newspaper review segment is next for us on the program. All right, so Blessing and I will go through the papers and take, of course, we have about 5 papers with us this morning. Well, today is Children's Day, and by the way, congratulations to our children on yet another Children's Day celebration, the 27th of May. Blessing.
Congratulations to us. We still have parents. So, they are telling us congratulations now.
Yeah, our parents should be the ones telling us congratulations. And congratulations, of course, to General Yakubu Gowon, Nigeria's head of state. It was during his administration that the Children's Day celebration was launched. So 27th of May, every year, the children come out, of course, to celebrate. And 2 days, of course, from now, we'll have the inauguration of ceremonies across the Federation, of course, with the exception of the states where the governors will still be in office.
Do you recall with nostalgia some the moment of your Children's Day's activities?
Yeah, but I'm sure there are generational differences.
Oh, definitely.
In terms of Children's Day, much past, and of course they normally will boil rice and then they will serve meals, on those occasions, and they still do. But I think these days,
so many activities.
It's more of junk now, and ice cream and so on and so forth.
You can say that again, Kingsley. Okay, let's take a look at the papers.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the story from the Punch, which is the lead, isn't quite helpful in terms of the celebration that we ought to be having today. Punch says, Children's Day, that's the kicker. NUT bemoans worsening state of public primary schools. Details of that story can be found on page 2. You can see the composite photographs on the front page of the Punch newspaper there. Take a look at that, and these photographs are from different parts of the country. First photograph there to the left is from Mafoluku in Lagos. Another, it's from Calabar. And then the children who are studying under a tree there, that's from Bauchi. And below that, you have another photograph from Sokoto State, and yet another from Imo State, and still another photograph from Makurdi in Benue State. So, Children's Day, that's the lead story for the Punch. NUT bemoans worsening state of public primary schools. Then, about the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, we have the following headlines. We'll take some of them. Minimum wage will be paid from April 18th. That's according to Ngige. That's outgoing Minister of Labour. Insecurity. Buhari and Northern governors meet today, page 16. And 2 earpieces beside the nameplate. Ex-Police Affairs Minister Lame dies at 66. And many feared killed in fresh Jos violence. That's page 16. And then right at the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper, at the foot of the front page, that's below the photographs there, it says, National Assembly management asks lawmakers to quit offices Tuesday. National Assembly management asks lawmakers to quit offices Tuesday. Page 10. Their tenure, of course, will not end until sometime in June. So are they asking them to vacate their offices on Tuesday? They were not sworn in on the 29th of May. But I'm sure Bayer, of course, will join us in discussing that. He's already here with us in the studios. Residents blame SCDA chairman as Ogun begins demolition of 300 buildings. And don't blame JAM if best student misses Choice University. That's according to the JAM board. It is on page 10. Listen.
Okay. All right, well, let's take a look at the Nigerian pilot. Leading for the Nigerian pilot this morning, Nigeria's future bright. This is coming from Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. Encourages Christians to give hope to others and urges Nigerians not to be discouraged by present fault lines. Says we began with darkness, confusion, but will certainly end in brighter future. And he is also insisting that all hands must be on deck to fight insecurity. More details about that on page 8. And there you have a cross-section as photograph now of children during the interdenominational church service to celebrate the inauguration of President Buhari's second term in office at the National Christian Center yesterday in Abuja. Niger partners federal government on 8.6 billion Naira Zungeru Wushishi abandoned waterworks. That story is trending on page 11. And there are other stories. Buhari's order on Apapa gridlock, that's at the foot of the page. That's a kicker. Fuel scarcity looms. This is coming from Reps. In that same bit, let me welcome Bayo to today's review.
Thank you, Lesson.
Were you preparing to go for another Children's Day match yourself?
No. Well, the poor state of schools highlighted there is probably put in situation because today is Children's Day. And that is to draw attention to the plight of children face, especially the environment in which they go to study. Much as the school feeding program has encouraged enrollment, it seems as if the environment for which children go to school requires a lot of physical attention so that at least they can study in a conducive environment. And that is the essence of data. The other story that Kingsley alluded to is about the National Assembly. Outgoing members have been asked to submit keys to their various offices by 5 p.m. of tomorrow. Members of the National Assembly are presently engaged in evacuating their furniture, electronics, many of which have been sold to them at depreciated value. This is to enable renovation for the members elect and then to relocate offices to the members who are expected to resume on June 11. Like Kingsley pointed out, the current 8th National Assembly term expires on June 8, but apparently they are trying to allow some time to enable evacuation so that a renovation can take place before the 9th National Assembly resumes on June 11th. They are supposed to resume.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, I assuming there's, and there will always be need for the National Assembly members to work up until the 8th of June. So what happens if they don't have access to their offices after tomorrow? So there are some things that we do think, I don't know, sometimes it's as if, you know, the heavens will fall. There should be a procedure for say, look, the incumbent lawmakers are exiting on the 8th of May. What is it that you need to do to spruce up their offices? Must they vacate their offices 2 clear weeks, as it were, before the new lawmakers come in? I think there are better ways of handling this. They can do a lot of work in 1 week.
Yes. I think this is not the first time they are transiting from one assembly to the other. Yeah. They most probably are following a routine. Maybe that is their routine. 2 weeks before you go, there's a need to clear up the office, there's a need to renovate the offices, and also there's a lot of movement that is going on. Electronics, furniture, and other things that have to be moved.
Sales.
Yes, completely. So,
that is true, but some of them are also coming back.
Yes.
Yeah, so
apparently, it may not affect those who are returning and some key principal officers, especially those who have won re-election.
Re-election.
Actually.
All right, so we'll see how they sort themselves out. Yes, so that because if there were to be some urgent national issue requiring the attention of the National Assembly, I'm sure the commentators will say that the lawmakers have abandoned their task before the end of their tenure. Obviously. Bayo, let's look at other headlines. Leadership newspaper is next for us. And lead story says, 48 hours to inauguration, President Buhari signs 2019 budget. That's on page 4, with 3 riders arising from the celebrations leading to the 29th of May. Worst days are over, Oshibajo assures Nigerians. Pray for presidents and other leaders. That's according to Gawan. And no more room for blame game, says Onayekon. And then you also have the obituary story there, which I earlier read from The Punch. And the photograph on the front page shows Chief Edwin Clark with members of his family cutting the cake to mark his 92nd birthday. Chief E.K. Clark, as popularly called, Edwin Kiagbodo Clark. Juth, that's Jos University Teaching Hospital, undertakes first brain surgery using drilling machine. That's on page 2. Then you also have another story. The states banned by law to pay 30,000 naira minimum wage. That's attributed to the federal government. And 50,000 out-of-school children live in Borno IDP camps. Page 13.
Well, let's get to other headlines. I've seen on the Daily Trust this morning, just below the nameplate, we have federal government budgets 47 billion naira for Nigerian air. That story is showing on page 17. Governor's petition on NFIU guidelines baseless. This is coming from Nogel. More details about that on page 3. Now, leading for the Daily Trust this morning, last-minute contracts, appointments, outgoing, incoming governors set to clash. Bayo.
Yes, let's go to the budget now. All things being equal, the president is expected to sign the budget today. The budget, it may be recalled, was laid before the National Assembly, December 18th. In spite of the recess for Xmas and New Year, and also the general election of February and March, the National Assembly were able to pass the budget in record time. It was passed on 30th of April. If we are to go back in time, we'll find that the earliest time the National Assembly were able to pass the budget was budget 2013. It got passed by February of 2013. Other budgets, 2011 to 2012, was passed March. 2014, 2015, and 2016 got passed in May, and 2017 was passed in June. All things being equal, the budget, recurrent expenditure is now 4.5 billion, capital 2.09 trillion, and debt services 2.25 trillion. The difference between what the president presented, 8.83 trillion, and what the National Assembly approved, 8.91 trillion, is 9.3 billion naira. The other story which Kingsley read was that 19 governors of northern states are expected to meet with President Muhammadu Buhari today. It is at the instance of the Northern Governors Forum. The chairman of the Northern Governors Forum, Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State, gave this indication, and it is top on the agenda is to discuss subject of insecurity and other developmental matters affecting the region. The other interesting story is that broke over on Friday. Zamfara State has now a new governor-elect, and he is Dr. Bello Mohammed Mutawale. This followed the judgment of the Supreme Court Friday. The court nullified all votes cast for the All Progressive Congress and other parties with second highest votes who met the constitutional requirement for the election to be declared winner of that election. INEC accordingly announced on Saturday, published 36 candidates who are now candidates-elect. They are, if you look at them now, you now have 35 candidates comprising the governor and his deputy, 3 senatorial seats, 7 House of Representatives seats, and as well as 24 State House of Assembly seats. All of them are now going to go to the People's Democratic Party. What price do they have to pay? The failure to comply with internal democracy. You may recall that it showed its head in Rivers and Zamfara State, and the court has emphasized internal democracy is part of the foundation for our democracy to thrive.
No doubt about that. I mean, there are a number of issues arising from the decision by the Supreme Court on Friday. Well, there was a blip, I thought, when the INEC officials indicated that, yes, they had heard about the Supreme Court decision and they were going to study. They had a meeting, by the way, and then said they were going to give their verdict by today. But happily, by Saturday, they had announced that the PDP candidates were now the persons deemed elected on the basis of the Supreme Court decision. It seemed to have been a fairly straightforward decision by the Supreme Court, to the extent that INEC had in its possession the results of the election. The only one that would have been contentious, for example, would have been the governorship election. The Supreme Court indicated that the next candidate with the highest number of votes and with the requisite spread should be declared winner. So, and having declared the votes recorded for the for the APC candidate as being wasted votes, those votes were not going to count in determining spread. I mean, so all the votes that were scored by all the candidates will now be added together. And if the second highest scoring candidate made 25% of those votes in each of those local governments, about 2/3 of the local governments, it was straightforward. And I'm sure that's a decision that INEC could have worked on Friday. So, but those are issues, of course, that we'll take forward in subsequent programs. But
other critical issue that I'd like to draw attention to, the National Broadcasting Commission has clarified that the radio license that is becoming controversy had been granted to the National Commission for Nomadic Education, and it is meant for the purposes of nomadic education outreach programs. It was issued September 28, 2018, and it is to cover a period of October 2018 to October 2023. The license is for educational programs for migrant herders, fishermen, hunters, and farmers. It may be recalled that there has been publication that there was a radio license granted to Miyetti Allah meant for Fulanization of Nigeria, and that the National Broadcasting Commission says we have to be very careful in twisting sensitive national issues to threaten the unity and stability of Nigeria.
Yeah, that story is on page 3 of Daily Trust, actually, on the inside page. Okay, the editorial.
The editorial is from Daily Independent newspaper, and it's at page 16. The headline is Saraki, the 8th Senate and Lessons for Democracy. Editorial, of course, begins that as the 8th National Assembly winds down its 4-year legislative mandate, politicization has also come into play. While a stock taking on the performance of the outgoing legislatures should ideally take the center stage, the ongoing penchant for divisive propaganda against outgoing assemblymen, as has been witnessed lately, is not only diversionary, but also a devious culture for national disunity. It says, while Saraki would have no doubt learned some lessons from his gale-shaking political voyage, his traducers should also learn theirs by imbibing the culture of political maturity. The fact that he led a Senate that was not a rubber stamp should, however, stand to the credit of the outgoing Senate president, as that is exactly the beauty of democracy.
Well, the import of that editorial is to emphasize again the ideal relationship between the executive and the legislature. When campaigns are over, what the legislature, the judiciary, and the National Assembly all should be concerned about is national development. In other words, partisanship ought to give way after campaign to national development. But what we have is that persistent partisanship undermines development and retards our nation. And that is, we have witnessed the poorest of relations between the executive and the legislature with the tenure of the 8th National Assembly. And that it is our democracy that has suffered so much so for it, not the personal egos that were rather being pushed ahead.
Well, you're right, Bayo.
Thank you. I mean, sometimes when people say poorest relationship, how would you describe the relationship between Gali Naba, who was Speaker of the House of Reps, and OBJ in 2002 with the threat of impeachment against President Obasanjo at the time?
Squalor relationship.
All right. Anyway, that's our democracy 20 years on. Bayo, thanks a lot for being around.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll get ahead with our items for discussion this morning.
A new chapter is about to begin in the annals of the history of Nasarawa State as the new elected governor of the state, Engineer Abdullahi Alhaji Sule, and his deputy, Dr. Emmanuel Agbadu Akabe, take over the mantle of leadership of the state.
After piloting the affairs of the state diligently in the last 8 years, Governor Umaru Tanko Almakura is set for a glorious exit as he hands over power to the energetic and promising engineer on May 29, 2019 in Lafia.
The historic exchange of baton between Governor Umaru Tanko Almakura and forward-looking A.A. Sule is built for the Lafia Square in the heart of the state capital.
Indeed, for the people of Nasarawa State, it is from a progressive era to the next level of development.
Join the train and be part of history of the epoch-making celebration beginning by 9 a.m. at the Lafia Square along Jos Road, Lafia.
Announcer,
His Excellency Silas Ali Agara,
Deputy Governor of Nasarawa State and Chairman, Nasarawa State Government Transition Committee.
Team huddle. But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortis on Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes. So, get Mortis Power Guard.
Welcome back. The program is Good Morning Nigeria. You're right in time for the first part of our discussion, and that is if you just joined us anyway. And if you've been following, I'm sure you're waiting to actually say to this particular segment of the program. Now, to take a look at the National Assembly, the 8th National Assembly. Of course, we have a guest already seated. There were several bills, there were motions, there was the first relationship. But then, how did it all play out? Our guests will be telling us in a moment, or at least we'll take a look at that. Then the 8th National Assembly joining us to look at that this morning. We'd like to welcome Senator Ita Enang. He's the Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, Senator Ita Enang, pleasure to have you again. And as we did indicate at the commencement of this conversation, we're looking at it from the executive perspective. The story out there is that the relationship between the legislature, that's to say the 8th National Assembly, and the executive branch was frosty. But in spite of that, there would appear to have been a very busy conveyor belt of bills that were passed by the National Assembly. Some or most assented to, and also there seemed to have been a high rate of rejection, or decline rather, by the President. Evaluating the transactions between the executive and the legislative branches for the 8th National Assembly over the last 4 years, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the relationship was tough, hard, often frosty, not the best of what ought to have been, but the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari converted it to the best of situations, because the the nature of the relationship did not allow for any other matter other than constitutional observance of your roles, of the role of the legislature and the executive. And what Mr. President did was to make sure that even in the nature of the relationship that was, which is improving, because the relationship has improved a little bit after the elections, because much of the things that led to the frosty relationship were political issues, some interest, and some, I'm sure you observed some of them during the primaries of the political parties and even during the elections. And after that, the president, Mr. President, has won the election. APC has won the elections. So after that, most of those issues have gone well. Now, most of on the part of Mr. President, on the part of the executive, we had real concentration on scrutiny of bills passed by the legislature. And some of them, which ordinarily Nigerians would have thought that it should be assented to because they were just a matter of course, it was such that if Mr. President assents to it, there would be more problem, there would be political or legal confusion, and there would be institutional destabilization. For instance, if you take some bills, if I can get into particular, some bills like the National Transport Commission, and then you take some bills like the avoidance of double taxation between the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Republic of Korea. Now, take the bills on Korea. It was a treaty or an agreement agreed between Nigeria and Republic of Korea in 2006. And the agreement was signed by Nenandi Usman, as he then was later a senator of the Federal Republic, as Minister of State Finance. Now, it was presented to the legislature at that time. It wasn't assented. It wasn't passed. It was later presented in 2011. It ran into trouble. Now, in 2016, Mr. President, or thereabout, Mr. President presented it again. Now, when the legislature passed it, the Senate and the House, they changed the words that were in the treaty. They excluded some of the clauses, like clause 24 of the agreement, in such that if Mr. President assents to it, it will be a different agreement, not what was signed between the two countries, that is South Africa, that is Republic of Korea and Nigeria. For instance, they changed the word from prohibition, from avoidance of double taxation to prohibition of double taxation. Then the National Assembly also changed the word Republic of Korea to Republic of South Korea. And if you say Republic of South Korea and Mr. President assents to it, then it is an agreement between a non-existing country. It is a different thing altogether. As minor as it was, as it seemed in the eyes of the ordinary man, but Mr. President's legislative refinery, Mr. President's team, and Mr. President all detected this and said, look, this cannot be. And if I sign it, it will create a problem. And so Mr. President declined assent, stated his reasons. Fortunately, a very responsive legislature has seen it. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives have passed it again and will be communicating it to Mr. President for consideration. Now, you look at the bill on the National Transport Commission. You look at the way it seems to appropriate the functions of other ministries to be under the Shippers Council. And in the bill, in the words of in the communication of Mr. President to the National Assembly, that if he assents to the National Transport Commission as it is, passed by the National Assembly, it will make the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing to now be under the National Transport Commission. And the National Transport Commission will now transmute, and the Shippers Council will now transmute to be the National Transport Commission, making the ministries that are supposed to supervise it to now be under it. And when you look at this, now you will now know that Mr. President had reasonable, cogent, and verifiable reasons to decline assent to some of the bills. Like some of the ones, definitely sought to take the monies of state government, federal government, state government, local government, and federal government to be appropriated to some of the agencies that were created, you know. And Mr. President said, I am the President of the Federal Republic. I cannot allow the monies that are meant or should be shared between to the states and the local governments to be appropriated and given to any agency of the federal government. And sometimes he says, although you can, but it is excessive. And those arms of government and those tiers of government should survive and have their own money. And sometimes you have a bill passed which seeks to generate tax and make it belong to the federal government. Mr. President says, this tax you want to generate under this bill you've passed, it ought to be shared to the 3 tiers of government, and you are encroaching. This bill will encroach on the taxable avenues and revenues of the other tiers of government and will make them not viable and not have enough money. So if you see all this, Mr. President had to exercise a lot of refining, a lot of attention to all details before assenting or declining assent to bills. But most of these bills are being reworked again, and those that the National Assembly considers Mr. President's overriding, that is completely agreeable and nothing to pass, they have
Senator,
rested.
It's good enough you've been able to evaluate, at least in your own way, what has taken place because of the 8th National Assembly. Let's take it. Being at least a lawmaker yourself, at least while you were in the House, there were tactics, there were styles for which every one of you moved for some of these motions and ultimately getting the bills across. For you, how would you score your colleagues, at least for the 8th National Assembly, some of those bills that were passed eventually, those that were assented to? Let's take, for instance, those had to do with ease of doing business and all those, the company and allied matters and the likes. Give us a sense of what really took place, ultimately getting us into what we are celebrating today, saying, okay, this commendation here and there.
Well, I will get to the specific of the companies and allied matters. The National Assembly has been very active, very responsive, very productive, and very engaging. Engaging the executive in most areas which the Assembly thought that it related to their powers. And of course, sometimes crossing what the executive considered the red line. And whenever they crossed the red line that related to matters which the executive considered that it was a matter for the executive, attention were drawn and there was a pushback. Now, the legislature has been very active again, particularly after the elections. Every person has settled down, and all the bills have been considered and reconsidered. Like the Companies and Allied Matters bill, as it still is. I think there was a lot of effort by the Office of the Vice President, by the Ease of Doing Business Committee, headed by the Vice President, by our Vice President's office and His Excellency the Vice President, the Minister of Trade and Investment, the Corporate Affairs Commission, and the other civil society advocates on the ease of doing business. Now, they were engaged, and the bill that has been produced, had some issues. Now, Mr. President did not formally communicate declining assent, because we considered that given the volume of the bill and the issues involved, that we could apply our back channel, to address it. So we applied the back channel. We had a team, myself and other officers from the executive, and the team of the National Assembly led by His Excellency the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara. We took another look at the Companies and Allied Matters. We looked at the issues that there were reservations, and they were of a nature that would create confusion, but not strictly illegality. Confusion of illegality, of interpretation, confusion of application. Some areas were left out we drew attention using our back channel. We've run into some agreement, some new agreement on that, and the National Assembly has repassed it. The same applied to the audit bill. The same applied to a lot of other bills. So we've gone far with this, and they have passed it again, and it will be transmitted soon again to Mr. President for consideration. So we did not, when the issues are of a nature that could be discussed, we get a back channel on.
Well, every piece of legislation is important. But from the executive perspective, which of the bills that then became law would the executive find most heartwarming?
That's very difficult to say, because every bill that comes to Mr. President for a decision on a yes or no will be very heartwarming. But I think the few I could say that Mr. President really, all of us at the executive got really heartwarmed were the ones that related to labor. That is the minimum wage, the bill that the public choose to call the Not Too Young to Run, the bill that related to the amendment of the Constitution, because after a long time, this is one occasion where we have successfully amended several areas of the Constitution, particularly relating to elections, electoral processes, but opening the field for a greater participation of the electorate, of the younger persons, and then tidying the electoral process. The other bills are those that relate to the economy, and those ones that relate to the manufacturing and agricultural sector. The other one that will, when it eventually come into force, will be a few of them, including the avoidance of double taxation between the Republic of Korea and Nigeria, because that will open the vista for great number of investments and investors from Korea into Nigeria, like the big companies.
Quickly, distinguished Senator, so while Kingsley asks for those that are heartwarming, I'm sure there are still some that are kind of still a thorn.
I'm sorry?
I said that there are still some bills, too, that are actually still bringing some kind of friction between the legislature and the executive.
It's not friction at all. It is engagement. Because I agree, Mr. President, the legislature swore in their oath to observe the provisions of the Constitution and the law. Mr. President swore to protect and defend the Constitution. So any matter which Mr. President, the executive and Mr. President considers that it will be a breach of the Constitution which he swore to protect and defend, he will definitely give a signal saying no. Anyone which had some small issues or issues which are not very nature, he will say, look, we can rework on it. So there is the petroleum industry bill, it has been reworked again, and it has been passed again, but it's yet to be transmitted to Mr. President. But let me say that the petroleum industry bill, I won't predict, but it split the petroleum industry into three. And it is one of them that was passed. The other second one has also been passed, but is yet to be concord, and we're yet to receive it. Now, remember, Mr. President had reservations because what the president said, and the public applauded, was if you give 10% of the entire amount that the Petroleum Regulatory Commission regenerates, that it will get into trillions. And like I've said once or twice, that Petroleum Regulatory Commission will become like a continent, bigger than what they will generate and keep. Will even be more than the budget of the country for a year. Then Mr. President also drew attention to another provision which related to Petroleum Equalization Fund, which was to keep 5% of the total value of the consumption of Nigerians on petroleum. Mr. President said that was too much. Already what it was keeping was too much, and that this money belongs to the local governments, state governments, federal capital territory, and the federal government, and that agency cannot generate and keep. So that's it.
There are some commentators who say that the 2019 elections might have been different in terms of the coloration if the Electoral Act Amendment Bill had been signed by the president?
That it would have had some different coloration?
Yeah, it might have had some different coloration.
I think it would have had a coloration of a negative nature. It would have had a coloration of some situation which would have led to more inconclusive elections. Remember, Nigeria is the state party to the ECOWAS Protocol and other international conventions. And Mr. President, in declining assent to the bill, to the Electoral Amendment Bill, as it were, had stated that, look, some of these provisions, if I assent to it now, the Independent National Electoral Commission will not be able to bring up strategies that will get that election on. It may lead to a postponement. I will assent to it if you state in the bill that the provisions will come into effect after 2019 elections. But if that is not so, and I assent to it, it will cause confusion. It will cause problems. We will be breaching international convention. We will be creating problem for the Independent National Electoral Commission. So, in your words, it would have given a different coloration to the 2019 election in the negative. And of course, the National Assembly agreed with it, and they have reconsidered most of those things and have passed another electoral amendment bill, which has been transmitted to Mr. President.
All right. Now, that's a very important point that I would like you to also respond to this before we sign you off. What happens in the overlapping transition period? The president's tenure ends at midnight tomorrow, and he gets sworn in for a second term on the 29th of May, which is on Wednesday. But the 8th National Assembly will not be functus officio until the 8th of June. So what happens to the bills that are before the president, and what happens to bills that the National Assembly may pass and then transmit to the president before the expiration of their tenure on the 8th of June?
President Muhammadu Buhari is still the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the present 8th Assembly will be the legislature for President Muhammadu Buhari up to the day Mr. President will issue a proclamation dissolving it and another proclamation convening it. Now, the Constitution provides that the legislature shall exist for a period of 4 years, commencing from the date it was inaugurated. Therefore, so that there are still a living, functional, active, and legal legislature up to the dissolution by proclamation or end. Now, the bills they pass will still be assented to by Mr. President, and there will be, I think they may, if Mr. President forwards certain of the requests to him, because there are certain urgent requests which Mr. President will under the Constitution, have to make requests to them. So when Mr. President is sworn in for a second term, any matter he desires to be passed by the legislature will still be communicated to this 8th Assembly until the 9th Assembly is inaugurated on a date that will be proclaimed by Mr. President in the proclamation. The Constitution asked him to...
Senior Special Assistant to the President of the National Assembly Matters, Senator Ita, and thank you very much for coming to the program this morning. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a break. When we return, it will be time to take a look at the Niger Delta and that region's activities under the Buhari administration. That will be after this break.
Go.
Madam.
That's it. Those naira are enough.
Hi, dear.
Helen!
You got so much even after spending so little.
Savings is such a necessity.
You save everywhere, but here, you lose it all.
How?
With this?
Impossible.
New Tika Apic 10X.
Even after applying up to 1 liter of your solution multiple times, you won't get the same cleaning that Apic gives you in a single round.
And the expense?
Far less compared to your 1 liter of solution. New Tika Apic. Toughen cleaning,
toughen savings.
What is fake news? A false information with no verifiable source presented as true story on media platforms with the sole intention of causing injuries, chaos, and disaffection between persons, groups, or countries. Fake news facilitates extremism. Fake news creates panic and distrust. Fake news breeds hatred,
Fake news kills. Don't joke with it. Don't be in a rush. Verify your sources and facts. It is better late than fake. This message is brought to you by NTA News 24.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, for our second topic for discussion this morning, we're taking a look at the Niger Delta affairs in the last 4 years. And for this purpose, let's take this background up by correspondent Serafina Okon.
The Niger Delta region of Nigeria in the past grappled with challenges of insecurity and vandalization of oil pipelines, leading to loss of billions of naira to the Nigerian economy. The Buhari-led administration, on assumption of office, came up with a new plan and vision for the rich oil region of the Niger Delta to reach people to benefit maximally from the region's oil wealth. Showing personal commitment to Niger Delta development, President Buhari initiated the takeoff of the Nigerian Maritime University in Okeren-Koko, Delta State. The university was granted approval in January 2018 by the National Universities Commission to commence undergraduate degree programs effective from the 2017 and 2018 session and accorded all privileges of a full-fledged university. President Buhari's administration also set aside $170 million seed funding for the Ogoni cleanup and the Ogoni healthcare outreach program. In the same vein, billions of naira have been expended under the Presidential Amnesty Program to ensure the rehabilitation and reintegration of ex-agitators of the Niger Delta region. Many of the ex-agitators have been engaged in formal education, vocational skills acquisition, and empowerment schemes to make them self-reliant and useful to their communities and the nation. The administration equally gave approvals for the establishment of modular refineries across the 9 states of the Niger Delta and a total of about 38 licenses issued, covering high-scale refineries of 50,000 to 250,000 barrels per day. In the area of security, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osibajo, on behalf of the Buhari administration, severally visited the states of the region, engaging the youths and elders, assuring them of government's action plans for their development. This has greatly restored peace to the region and opened channels of communication for development. The Nigerian gas flare commercialization program aimed at curbing gas flaring in the Niger Delta region has also been instituted with community-based participation in the project of oil and gas pipelines and critical assets in the Niger Delta. How can the gains in the region be sustained and the challenges addressed? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers shortly.
Thank you very much, Serafina Okun. The guests are already seated. Now, joining us to take a look at Niger Delta Affairs under the Buhari administration, we'd like to welcome the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Pastor Osani Oguru Osani. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much.
And also joining him on set tool, and is already in the studio as well, Professor Charles Dokubo is a special advisor to the President on Niger Delta Affairs and also the coordinator of Presidential Amnesty Program. Welcome to the program, Prof.
Well, thanks for having me.
Kingsley.
All right, let's begin with the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Pastor Osani. Since 2015, what has changed in the narrative of the Niger Delta?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity once again. I believe that the changes that have taken place between 2015 and now are quite visible. I recall that at the inception of this administration, suspicion loomed in the air. And that obviously amounted to the continuous agitation, which also had the implication of vandalization of oil infrastructure. But with time, I believe the people of the Niger Delta realized that the sincerity of the administration was not just a lip service. And so far, you will see that there has been a conscious understanding to guarantee warmness, harmony in the relationship between the parties of development in the Niger Delta region, which to a great extent has brought about the peace that we have now, and also culminating in the execution or implementation of some of the critical considerations or concerns of the people of Niger Delta, like the Ogoni cleanup that you mentioned. And so the psychological imperative alone is great, because without that understanding, nothing else can happen. So I would say that that is the greatest achievement, because everybody now sees himself as a party in the struggle and in the ambition or bid to revamp the Niger Delta Development Program by all the agencies involved. In a nutshell, I would say what has changed in the Niger Delta is the anxiety that used to be and often felt even in the air. Now it is giving peace a chance for development to take place.
Now, in terms of actually rolling on with development, what is visible?
Well, you see, development has a philosophy, and perspectives of development are also perceived according to local variations and who is perceiving or conceiving it. In a view, development is what enables somebody to have a good life. Again, good becomes relative. For instance, if in the past we never understood that allowing the Ogoni cleanup to take place would enhance the program of people returning back to their vocations in agriculture, that in itself is a great achievement. If in the past people did not know that having to receive, call it visitors or strangers, to resettle in the Niger Delta region to do their business, it was affecting development negatively. But most of the time, you see, the pedestrian state of the Niger Delta in several decades ago, without even allowing what you won't call critical, but fundamental or basic needs, was a serious setback. Today, several programs, projects are going in the Niger Delta. So what is easily visible is the fact that contractors are now working with less histories of or stories of kidnapping and so on. So from where the Niger Delta has been for several years, development is just beginning to kickstart. For instance, you saw the promises made by the Vice President when he visited the Niger Delta region going round. Some of them are taking effect. And so people see that the pronouncements of the government in respect of the Niger Delta region are becoming real. And so it is visible enough to see even the amnesty program. Of course, the coordinator is here. The way it is rolling out and also exiting people out. Of course, let me not run ahead of him. But all this amount to the development of the region, because every component of the development agenda in the region has an interwoven implications to another.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Let's get to talk to the coordinator. Already said you didn't want to run ahead. We were trying to beat time to see where the other loose ends are before we get to him. But now, let's take him on. This is one program, because there are several programs we're introducing today. Kingsley talked about the UMPA-DEC. We had other several interventions coming up. But then, is the Niger Delta truly emancipated through a program like the Presidential Amnesty Program today?
I think talking about the Presidential Amnesty Program, it is based on two-pronged issues, maintaining peace and security as well as human development. And in those two cases, the Amnesty Program has done well, in the sense that there is peace and security in the area. You can judge that not only by an amount of crude oil being pumped out of the Niger Delta, but also the human security aspect of it, that the people are settled, they're able to be trained and retrained, and also be nursed back to health so that they could get jobs as other Nigerians and not depend on stipends alone.
Well, this is a tricky one to ask because the purpose of the amnesty program arose from militancy and agitation for resource control and remediation of the environment that had been despoiled by oil exploration and production activities. If the amnesty program is tied to peace and security, which, as you say, has visible dividends, some persons are likely to also ask this question. How come suddenly on the political front we are seeing a spike in violence? Rivers is often described as rivers of blood. Bayelsa is also under the gun. And these are two major oil-producing states in the Niger Delta. Delta State, of course, is less so. How does one explain this? I know that that's not an amnesty program, but how does one explain it?
But I hope that you understand. The facts have not been well placed. River State and Niger and the Bayelsa State are not areas where guns are flowing back and forth. I think they've been stabilized. If you talk about political issues that are dividing the people, that's a different narrative. But if you're talking about the stability and security of the area, of the environment of the Niger Delta, there's been a sensible stability in the Niger Delta that you cannot compare it 3 years back.
No, that's why I said. That's why I'm saying clarify this. I mean, I understand the issues fairly well, but again, for the benefit of our viewers, we are saying that peace and security. Fine, you might say peace and security for economic or productive activities, namely oil exploration, but on the political front, because without social peace, productivity could be impacted. So that's what I'm asking. You are from the area, and of course you're a professor. You used to be Institute of International Affairs. How does an outsider understand these developments?
They must understand it in the sense that when we talk about security, we are not only talking about military maintained security. We are talking about human security, where the human being becomes a reference point of security. If the people in the Niger Delta have acquired most of the things that escaped them, now I think there's a relative peace there because they've seen themselves Nigerians. They've seen oil production rising. They've also maintained peace and security, depending that my office has been able to reach out to the people, buy them into the program of the federal government. That's why you have this relative peace. If you can see Niger Delta about 2 years and then today now, you know that there's a massive difference. All the kidnapping and all this have stopped. Also, they've relatively been contained. And also you can say that because I've been interfering in the areas and lives of the people in the Niger Delta, creeks and all that, you can see that the busting of pipes are things of the past. So these are the approaches that we have adopted. We adopt a holistic approach to the Niger Delta, where the concept of security goes beyond posting soldiers and all that, but that the people buy in the people to the program so that they understand what they demand and how their demands could be met.
Well, why not seeking to answer, answer the question which I posed? It would appear, therefore, that yes, the amnesty program is going on and is achieving its results, but political skirmishes are also ongoing on account of differences that are probably ingrained.
Those are not aliens.
No, but political crises are fundamental to developing countries. It's not because of the resources there again. It's about the political divide within communities and societies.
Right.
Since we all belong to various parties, and the militarized nature of the Niger Delta has, in fact, created a situation where people don't even exchange ideas again. They've been conflict situations and conflict environment have turned some of them that even accepting the reality that these are political ideas that could be contested for, it's difficult for them to accept.
How concerned are the people of the Niger Delta for today? Success of the amnesty program, for which human development, of course, is at the center of this. How have they been able to at least push in that direction? Because I know some of the questions, part of the question is raising. Yes, there is on one hand, development is trying to go on through programs such as presidential amnesty program, but at the same time, and you're a professor who was studying for nuclear proliferation and some other things as well like that. We've talked about issue of arms and light weapons proliferation, even in that region. Yes. How are these going on, and how are the people of Niger buying into such programs to actually develop the area?
Of course they are buying, because that's why we have decided to set up training centers, bringing back people from conflict and nurse them back to health, to be accepted in society where they could be seen as different people, is that we have these vocational training centers. If you look at all the states in the Niger Delta, we have been able to develop that. How do you do? We have a database of Niger Deltans that could be put into these programs, so that not only just being trained, but also a job placement system in our office, that if you're trained, those who train you could also employ you. These are the most critical area that has brought down the level of conflict in the Niger Delta. Because, it's not in the past, I believe it was just training for training, but now it's training with job placement. So at once you are trained, you acquire the required certification, you can immediately exit to a job that you earn a living.
All right, Professor Dokubo, thanks. Let's return to the Honorable Minister of Niger Delta Affairs. Earlier, you talked about the fact that the people of the Niger Delta listened to the Vice President. There were, of course, reports of the number of shuttles that the Vice President made to the region. What was the essence of those shuttles? And how did it win the people over to say, all right, so let's give the administration a chance?
Well, the first index of that seeming appropriation of conscience, of probity or equity on the pronouncements of the Vice President could be seen in the fact that the people expressed themselves. They had a chance to interact with government at that level for the first time. And following from there, you could see that from that moment, people's reactions from the region as per what they think of government and its pronouncements has reasonably allowed an environment that can guarantee further communication, interaction, and therefore development. And that has culminated in, the opening of the Okerenkoko University. That was a turbulent issue. The Vice President addressed it when he visited. And I know the frantic efforts that were made in meetings, especially the Interministerial Committee, where all people doing development or all agencies doing development had representations in that committee. The Vice President is the chairman. I'm the Vice Chairman. And I know how the Vice President at each of those meetings was very, very emphatic on any promise he had made on the land. Of course, the university has taken off. Second, there is a road project that is to be constructed to Brass. That project is on course right now. 3, the modular refineries, which the Ministry of Petroleum Resources had also initiated as a way of stemming down what we call the illegal refinery business or bunkering and so on, is on course. And from the pronouncement of the Minister of Petroleum Resources, in no distant time would 1 or 2 of them be commissioned. Now, if a government makes pronouncements and people see it come to pass, it enhances confidence. And so what those decisions have brought about is the fact that it has improved the confidence level of the people of Niger Delta in government. And that in itself is enough to allow peace to take on. Recall that after 2nd June 2016, when the Vice President had to initiate the event of Ogoni land cleanup, almost immediately violence started again, which to a reasonable extent affected the takeoff time of that program. But after these things that have been taking place, I believe the people on their own have decided to say, let's give peace a chance. So we can see these programs and projects running as a consequence of this visitation by the Vice President. And I am sure as we continue to give this situation a chance, then much more will come. So if these indicators mean anything to us, which hitherto were placed on the doubting table, then we can be sure that everything said by the government will be done in time, in due course.
You talked about the road to Bryce, which is the East-West Road, right?
No, not the East-West.
That's one. That's another
This
one.
Is a maritime road purely.
Okay. So what's the state for now? What are being done presently?
Yeah, for such projects, naturally, there will be a feasibility, there will be a design, and so on and so forth. Right now, the component parties because it's not just one agency that is going to do it. The NDDC is making contributions to it. And then the international oil companies are making contributions to it. The parties are building up the relevant infrastructure necessary elements or resources.
Is the issue of multiplicity of agencies to actually tackle development in Niger Delta region a problem for Niger Delta development?
Well, the issue of multiplicity of agencies is not a problem. It is the duplicity and multiplicity of projects by different agencies in the same locations under the same program that becomes a problem, which is why the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs had what we call a platform which developed what we call the Strategic Implementation Work Plan, being to bring all parties together, including the amnesty program, so that whatever thing that is being done at any level, in any community, any locality, by two agencies, will have its cost element expressed, it will have the type of project, the subsector defined, and the period within which that accomplishment is expected. And from this strategic implementation work plan, every agency, including the international oil companies, have specified what they want to do on a midterm call between 2017 and 2020. This document has been produced. The ministry is yet to formulate a policy out of it.
Why is this so?
Why it is to formulate a policy out of it? Of course, everything takes stages. Of course, a policy has to undergo a test to be sure how well it will be received, and also to vet itself and be sure that if it comes on board, the criticisms will be less. So the reason, well, when you say why is it so, my understanding is that you're thinking that it is delayed. But
well, let you continue.
But first, you have to ask at what stage is it. At first, when we initiated it, we had to send out a draft to stakeholders to make comments. And from their comments, we had to refine it to fit whatever inputs we had further. Beyond that, we then had to check the records to be able to have the exact identifiers of what this development will mean in various places. And then, having done this, it is undergoing scrutiny because all the parties have to agree that this policy is good for all of us, and we have all endorsed it. What is left at this stage is just a memo to get it to the policy level. And we have sent it to the chairman of the Interministerial Committee on the Niger Delta, who is the vice president. His office is vetting it because being the chairman, he should only have a policy that he knows, he is aware of, he is familiar with, and so endorsing it will suggest that, yes, what we have done is correct. So once that document comes out of his office, the policy document or instrument will be fronted for approval by the Federal Executive Council.
Is this a policy? Is it a policy issue or a project schedule or a schedule of projects? You can answer that along with this question. What is the status of what some already described as the albatross, that is the East-West Road?
Well, when you have already said I can answer alongside with this other one. When you talk of a policy issue, the objects of a policy can be multidimensional, can be unidimensional. So if you talk about a policy, of course a policy should have something comprehensive enough to address whatever it's talking about. So when we talk about policy, of course, projects, programs, departments, agencies, and so on are implicated in whatever that is concerned about. So it is a policy issue because if it's not a policy, you cannot define the different placements of the various agencies involved in development. Then the albatross that you mentioned about the East-West Road is an unfortunate situation. I have said in this studio that we have had several problems and complications about the East-West Road. I have mentioned also that deriving from what I say in the policy document, in the project documentation and contractual obligations as endorsed in the past, that this project was designed to fail. And struggling with it has been to put it on the right course so that we will be able to have a project as intended to set the social and economic parameters of the region. So far, I can tell you the East-West Road project from Section 1 to 4, which had been awarded and had been ongoing, has got an approval for 100 billion naira to satisfy every outstanding certificate, and contractual obligation financially to complete those sections. Now, the NSIA, the Sovereign Investment Authority, is the one that is warehousing the funds to pay directly to contractors. So they are now vetting the claims of the contractors vis-a-vis the documents they have requested from the ministry, which we've handed over to them. Once that is done with them, we have held 2 meetings with them, a third one where we're waiting for them to respond to our request when they finish vetting the documents they have, so that they can now engage the contractor directly and with their consultants, apart from our own consultants. So there will be a cross-check program by which every claim made by a contractor is actually authenticated by the different parties involved before they begin to pay. But I can tell you, initially, all the contractors said a maximum of 97 billion will take charge of total completion. And the government has approved 100 billion, plus or minus any variances. And so I can tell you we are on course to go, but we are waiting for the Sovereign Investment Authority. Once they are through with that, I believe.
When did the Sovereign Investment Authority become, as it were, the auditors for the East-West Road?
Well, they are not the auditors, but every project executor or every investor, as it is right now, the NSIA is an investor in the project because it's spending money on it. Every investor, of course, must be sure of his finances and the flow of such finances. And that cannot be done without vetting or verifying what claims are made for the commitment of the finances in their custody. So they are not auditors. They are partners in investment.
Honorable Minister of Niger Delta, as you said, it's unfortunate that the East-West Road remains the way it is. I'm sure since they began construction of that road, if they were constructing the road from Cape Town to Cairo, they would have finished that a long while ago. Sure. So, we heard in the past that, in the course of construction, they came across certain difficult locations for which bridges were not previously budgeted for. So they had to construct bridges. There were swamps, there were all kinds of difficult terrain that they needed to deal with. We had these excuses over the years. But you have also said now, as you said in the past, that, the project, as you said, was designed to fail. So at what point have we now converted that design failure into a concept for success? And can we place some timelines on the milestones that will be achieved?
Thank you very much. Even your testimony bears witness to
I don't have a testimony on this
because you have told us here that they have said there were places where they did not foresee swamps and so on and so forth.
That's right.
And for a project of that nature, for anybody to come out with that excuse is criminal enough. It's morally criminal. Because you can't just say you start a road construction, even if it is 1 kilometer. You should have a concept of design that fits the location. Now, for anybody to say for a magnitude of that project, that some place they did not foresee this, they did not foresee that, which excuses I've heard when I came on board, I consider it quite unfortunate, which is why 2 of the bridges, long bridges of at least 800 to 900 meters, have become a problem in the area. But beyond that, I believe that in awarding the contracts, all parties from consultants, the contractors, and the supervising ministry or agency should have made sure that in the course of negotiations for the project, these things are taken into account. To tell me that professionals are constructing a road and then there is an offset which tends not to fit into the design, and therefore they're having problems, and a particular bridge had a sink twice. And it's a reason for you to come back to us to ask for more money to remedy it. If everything was within my perfect control, under monopoly of authority, I would have taken a different action. But here, it's difficult. So when I say your testimony bears witness to this, because you heard these stories before I came. Yes. And so these stories are not, I'm not an engineer. Even if I were, there are obligations to fulfill step by step to remedy such situations. Now, to answer the question of what have we done to correct that, they have asked for more money. And the engineers or consultants feel that it is right for us to give them the more money. And that has also been imputed into the cost that will collectively conclude the project from section 1 to 4. So this is the remedy we have taken, because we must listen to those who say they are technical experts or technocrats.
Timelines.
Yes, in terms of timelines, I must at all times be honest enough not to commit myself, because the controlling indices of construction in the Niger Delta beyond the natural weather or climatic situation are also complex. But you know, effective construction in the Niger Delta doesn't take more than 2 to 3 months, because virtually all the other months of the year, you have rains. And for construction of that nature, you must give room for dryness of land. So I will beg you to excuse me in that commitment.
Okay, let's go to other commitments. Crucial roads projects that are receiving attention.
I'm sorry to jump in here, so that, for me, that's for the close for the East-West Road. You said sections 1 to 4. We also heard at some point that they were now extending it beyond the original end point. I think they were now taking it into Akwa Ibom or Cross River. I'm not sure where exactly, because Yeson Wike, the executive governor of Rivers, had raised some issue about that, and the government now said, okay, they were going to extend it to that. Is this part of the section 4 you're talking about?
I don't think it is that extension is a consequence of anybody's concern. It was even initiated before I took office. And that contract, the first contract on that between Akwa Ibom and Cross River was awarded in 2013, when none of us was in such a position of privilege to decide on that or make such commentaries to invoke any such extension. But that in itself has suffered a setback, because though it was awarded and budgetary appropriations estimated, it never took off. And it gave us an opportunity to ensure that what has happened on section 1 to 4 doesn't happen there again. So we went back to offer a new design, because this would have even been more disastrous than what we had seen before. Socially, culturally, economically, and so on and so forth. And so we have got that new design. We have also got to the point where the Federal Executive Council has mandated us to renegotiate the contract, because the first contract had every provision of the financial implication domiciled in United States dollars, which in itself was quite an aberration, because you cannot say if somebody supplies you sand from the river over which you are constructing, you will pay him in dollars. If a laborer is digging the gutter, you pay him in dollars. So we found that abnormal. And besides that, we have gone ahead to ensure that all that has been redesigned is of effective service or delivery in the future. So right now where we are is negotiating with the former contractor on new terms. But the unfortunate thing is, at the time that contract was signed, a dollar was 155 naira. But today, a dollar is at least $1 is to 305 official rates, which has escalated the cost. But being that the government lacks resources, the Federal Executive Council has given the ministry the authority to get back and renegotiate on a second leg, involve other contractors, so that the competitive environment can then cause the price to go down for an award.
All right, Honorable Minister, it definitely is not all bleak stories for some of the projects, at least under your watch. You said some of these things took place before you were appointed. Now, under your own appointment and, of course, in the 4 years of the administration, what are the crucial road projects that have received the attention, and at least where are they located, and what is in it for the people's development?
Thank you very much. I think the best thing to say to you is, when I leave here, I'm going to send you a document of what we've done.
No, you could as well talk about it.
I will send you a document, because when you say which ones are, where are they, listing them one by one will take the entire time of this segment. But I can just go ahead to tell you what strategy we have adopted. You know, when we prepare our budgetary estimates and send to the National Assembly, what comes back becomes the budget. And so normally it's not exactly what we send that comes out. But we try to make sure we achieve something within the limits of what is provided for us. And so far we have adopted certain strategies. For instance, if a road is 10 kilometers to be constructed and we have 20 naira, we do not just mobilize on award of the 10 kilometers. We want to make sure that we can give maybe half kilometer, 1 kilometer, and take it to the final stage of asphalting, because that's what that money can take. So in respect of this, we have accomplished several of such projects based on the cost availabilities on what I will call phase one, whenever it's not possible to complete the total project based on budgetary estimate. So we've done some roads like that. We've done some water projects. We've done some electrification projects. We've done a health intervention project like health centers equipped. We've done also some ICT centers for schools. And we did that with the projection that the West African School Certificate and the NECO institutions, as well as JAM, are basing their test on IC or ICT. This then we are doing in preparation for enablement for such schools and students to be able to have more centers to operate as such. So when we have done this, it becomes on the school now to apply to the relevant agencies to say we have got this infrastructure. We've been providing computer sets to schools and building ICT halls for schools. So
one of, the execution arms of your ministry is the Niger Delta Commission. At some point, there is a peak of highlighted performance and activities, and at some other point, you get to hear of a lull. In the last 4 years, what is the report card of the NDDC from your perspective as a supervising minister?
Well, my perspective is that the Niger Delta Development Commission is at all times a place of attention for all Nigerians, as well a place of concern for the Niger Deltans. In terms of performance, because of the fact that this administration has a policy of little interference in day-to-day administration of agencies, we only ask questions, and what they give us is what we take. But in issues that attract our concern, for instance, when we receive petitions from contractors, from individuals, we make sure that we get explanations from the place. But rightly pointing out, at some point there has been a herald of the activities. At another point, there has been a lull. You know, from the moment that political activity set in, everything in the country about agency activities came to a low ebb.
So the supervising ministry is not satisfied with activities from the NDDC?
In some part, I'm satisfied. In some parts, I'm not satisfied.
All right. We'll probably have time to return to that. Let's bring in again Professor Charles Dokubo with respect to the amnesty program. Of course, there are reports of former militants who have trained. Some of them have become pilots. These are elite jobs and several others. But there is still some restiveness. You hear reports, you read stories about persons who are agitating, or some others want to be, as it were, permanent members of the program, and others are scrambling, to get on the program, even though they were not militants in the past. So what exactly is the situation with the amnesty program, and what is the future?
The fact is that the amnesty program has a database of 30,000 who are members of the program. And that we don't go beyond that. Inclusion is only done by the president with budgetary expansion following that. So definitely some people, when the amnesty started, they didn't want to appear. They were scared that they will be arrested. So they were not even documented in Akwa Ibom, in the Abuja camp and all that. They were not there. But later when they saw that it was moving peacefully, they decided to come back. But coming back wasn't possible because the line has already been drawn for those who could be members of the amnesty program. Furthermore, there is a place like in Ondo where the state government carried out its own disarmament program, and they wanted to be part of the amnesty program. They are all Niger Deltans, and we are all open to them to come in. But the fact also remains that we don't include people in the program. It is only the president that includes people, that there must be a presidential declaration. Then we could take them in. But there's also something different that we have done now. For instance, in Ondo, where you have the oil and gas training vocational center at Agaragba, if an institution is situated in a place and you have that situation, that crisis there, we've decided to bring back some of them to the institution to train them without paying them the stipends, to quell, disharmony and all that in the area. So that's what we are trying to do. So you can do that. But also for us, we're also drawing down on external offshore education and all that. Because when I came into the program, I was shocked to find out that there are people reading history and political science who are in America and all that. If I'd been at the beginning, there are enough Nigerian universities that would have occupied them. It will cut down on cost. That would be okay. That's why building vocational centers, completing structures that are uncompleted, is been the main thing that I'm carrying out now. Because I met the process after they've done the first Ds. It's a DDR program, demobilization, the disarmament, and then reintegration. I am now concerned with the reintegration, so that those who have been trained, retrained, could be given job. So that they could.
What is the focus? What is the focus of the vocational training?
Every vocational center has a different type of focus. The one in Agaragba is oil and gas for middling and then and lower class workers. The one in Kayama was supposed to be for carpentry and other handmade things like that in Kayama. While the one in Gelegele that we are building, that's also for gas.
No, well, what I'm asking actually has to do with the kind of requisite skills that have been acquired. I mean, oil and gas has a broad range. You will have you have issues with welding, you will have issues with fabrication. And in asking this question, I'm concerned because on Good Morning Nigeria, we have discussed technical education, technical training, and some of our guests, including the Reverend Timothy Wadaro, who sometimes joins us from our Benin Network Center, they get worried as to how government gets on with its program without actually falling back, as it were, on the institutions that have already been institutions or bodies that have already been established for the regulation of technical education.
Thank you for that question. That's what we're doing now, is that most of the vocational centers are not run by my organization. They are given to, like you have the Petroleum Training Institute that is in charge of Agaragba. So, when they come in, the certificate will come through there. We don't give it to individual trainers to train anymore. And that, because I saw that it was not proper. It's not because those training, we have training for training purposes. But when these people are under institutional guidance and being certificated by that institution, they could even ease out and get jobs in other places. Okay. That's why most of these training institutions are being set up now.
So how many of such are available now?
For me, the start point for me, and since I came into this office about a year plus, is Agaragba. Okay. It has been well instrumented. Everything there could stand the test of any competition anywhere, because we brought all the people, the best we can have in this country and outside, to come and set up the program. And then we have about 200 people there.
All right, Professor Dokubo, thanks. Back again to the Honorable Minister, Pastor Usani. In responding to our questions, you talked about the efforts of the government and how the people of the Niger Delta have, as it were, opted to trust the government, giving peace and security a chance because they see what is unfolding. And yet, we continue to hear of agitations for restructuring. How do you reconcile this?
Yeah, restructuring is as per the entire country. And before we talk, of course, the agitations for restructuring, it's really amusing to me. Because when we come on in public space to discuss restructuring, you hardly find people who are reducing the concept of restructuring to individual objects and defining the targets of such restructuring. And I am certain that a lot of us that talk about restructuring have not even studied the document that recommends restructuring. And if you talk of restructuring, you have political restructuring, you have economic restructuring, moral restructuring, and so on and so forth. But in each of these subsectors, a lot of work has to be done to really find out which model is best suitable for us. Now, when we talk of restructuring, a lot of the time you just say fiscal federalism. Fiscal federalism. Are we saying this in consistency with the provisions of our Constitution? We forget that some of the things that we clamor for cannot be done except there is a constitutional amendment. And when we say these things, do we suggest that returning to the old order, like you hear some say, let's get back to our regions? The regions, as it were in the past, had the entire what we call Southeast today under one umbrella. Today, the population has more than doubled as per when we had regional administrations. Are we suggesting that all the states at local government or state government levels will collapse under one administration? Have we defined the agenda for the sectors that will come under regional administration and the ones that will come under federal administration? Have we also defined the ways by which the top will relate with the lower, or the lowest being the local government level, under such an ever-increasing population, under diminishing resources, and under increasing demands, and then under the security circumstances, with the various things that we see today? For instance, in the past, you and I know that you could travel from Lagos to Kano. For a month, you may hear of just one armed robbery incident. But today, on a daily basis, virtually in all localities in Nigeria, you hear about security threats. And then some people are talking about, restructuring, state police, state police, state police. I will support state police if it guarantees security for all citizens. But in the context of what we are, who we are, without state police, you find us who are in politics recruiting criminals and arming them to kill political opponents, which is what you cited here. And if I'm a governor today and I use my own state police, tomorrow another governor comes. He sacks my own recruited state police and recruits his own. The one he sacks, they all take away their arms. And the new governor brings his own. And if there is any issue of disagreement between a local government or a state government and the federal government, now you have the federal police trying to maintain peace and the state police trying to maintain peace based on what they define as peace for whoever is concerned. And then you find a clash taking place. Would that not be a greater disservice to the intended good? So when we talk of restructuring, I like Nigerians to come and bring up sector by sector articulation of their conception of restructuring. It's not just an omnibus term. So we are interested in restructuring, which I know has been going on. Today, the government is interested in making sure that every tier of government gets their due funding. It's a form of restructuring, which, of course, has always been there but never implemented. Then the ethical conduct of all of us toward business and our service delivery is a form of restructuring. You have heard that they have signed Executive Order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. All these are indices of restructuring. So when you talk of restructuring, we must understand what we mean, what we want. But most of the time, you find people who are seeking some prominence. You just come because that's the popular street opinion, and you begin to advocate without thinking about the rudiments. So I like us to talk about restructuring, and really we are interested in restructuring, and we have been restructuring because we are not at a stagnant position.
All right. Honorable Minister of Nigeria Delta Affairs, restructure East-West Road, get it completed. I'm sure that's what people will be interested in as well.
Of course. Even the East-West Road has undergone restructuring because it was awarded in 2006.
Yes.
And then we came...
2015.
2015. 9 years later, it was where it was. So what I have told you about our plans to make sure it comes good is a prominent and obvious aspect of restructuring. So this government has been restructuring.
Construction restructuring.
Correct. Infrastructure restructuring as well. In the railway sector, road sector, power sector, and so on.
Okay. So we have some tweets, but of course, Mutana Farouk, some of the questions that were raised, the guests have already, if all the questions that they have raised, the guests have already addressed them. But there's something misleading that we need to correct. The Ogoni cleanup framework and takeoff has started. It's not been completed. It's going to take many years. So don't refer to the fact that the Buhari administration hasn't completed Ogoni cleanup. It's set up the framework and then, of course, the modalities. And then
it will take 25 years.
Absolutely.
By the UNEP report.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's ongoing. We shouldn't be impatient with that. We've also listened to the Amnesty coordinator, who is also special advisor to the president, and what's going on. It's on that note, we'd like to thank all those who sent in their tweets. As I said, Festus Akinboyewa, Musa Hadeja, Akejo Olagbaju, Law Alpha, Dele Jack Solomon, these are our regulars. We also have Cecilia Okoroma and Oti Zokbea from Cape Town, as he tweets, as Cape Town in South Africa. So, gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much for your tweets. We also would like to appreciate Professor Charles Dokubo, who's been with us on this program. He's Special Advisor to the President on Nigeria Data Affairs and Coordinator of the Presidential Amnesty Program. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Our appreciation also to the outgoing Minister of Nigeria Data Affairs, Pastor Usani Uguru Usani, Pastor UQ. Thank you very much for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria, and best of luck.
That's what my friends in secondary school used to call me.
All right, let's go over now to our sponsor.